I could not wait to do this comparison. Iain Valliere and Michal Krizo are some of the most polarizing guys in the sport of bodybuilding. Iain has criticized Krizo in the past, Krizo knows how to troll and push back, and on top of that, they placed right beside each other at last year's Mr. Olympia, which has added to the rivalry. Now, Krizo has been getting a lot of popularity. When he was talking a lot of shit while he was still in the Elite Pro League, a lot of people didn't like him, including Iain. But now that Krizo has proved himself and has improved every time he stepped on stage, he's gotten a lot more popular. I'd say the opposite for Iain. The more he seems to win, the more fans start to dislike him and his physique. Let's face it, Iain's physique is far from pretty, and just about every one of his pro wins and even a lot of his placings in general have gotten pushback from a big majority of fans. And the more Krizo competes, the more fans seem to like him. Since these guys just did pro shows this month and earned their Olympia qualification, I thought it would be a great idea to compare their two with their latest versions. I definitely have a lot to say about this comparison, and I'm sure you will too, so after you watch this, leave a comment and let me know how you saw this comparison shake out. And with all that exposition out of the way, let's jump right into the video, starting with the front double biceps. Starting off here, we have an absolute clear win for Krizo. Yes, Krizo isn't as conditioned as Iain, but this will be a theme throughout this comparison, and while conditioning is Iain's calling card, shape and aesthetics are not. And for this pose, we look for two things. The first one deals heavily in aesthetics, which is the outline and the silhouette the athlete displays. And then, of course, the second one is the arms. And Krizo has both of these categories easily checked off. Yes, Iain's waist is small, but his overall flow is nowhere near where Krizo's is. This pose perfectly encapsulates all the pros of Krizo's physique. He's big, he takes up so much space being 6 foot and filling out every part of his frame. If these two guys were on stage together, you wouldn't even look at Iain in this pose. Krizo commands any stage he goes on and automatically draws your attention. And of course, Krizo handedly wins in the arms. He's up there for some of the best arms currently with Nick Walker, and these can really be somewhere in the top 20 arms of all time at least. So Krizo wins both of the categories that are mainly being judged to the front double, and honestly, even though Iain's beat him in conditioning, Krizo's conditioning is still pretty good. So Iain is far from blowing him out of the water in his only saving grace. The front lat spread is usually Iain's bread and butter, and he looks really good here. This is probably his best pose, but Krizo is wide as hell. His shoulder to shoulder width is insane. However, Krizo's waist is still a little bit wide. His quads really have a good amount of sweep on them, but the overall thickness of his waist diminishes his lat taper. Take a look at Iain. His lats are much better than Krizo's to begin with, but with his smaller waist, even though Krizo is overall wider through the shoulder, Iain still cuts a better outline. And then for the lower body, I think it comes down to what you prefer. Iain's legs are huge and pack a lot of separation and detail, but so do Krizo's, honestly. And for the calves, Krizo's literally just so huge overall, but Iain has better lats and a better outline here. So honestly, I think this can go either way, and I really want to go with Krizo. I really do, but I'm going to give the slight edge to Iain. Traditionally, he checks all the boxes of what the lat spread should be, but I find it near impossible to take my eyes off Krizo. So I'll give it to Iain, but spoiler alert, this won't be a common occurrence in this comparison, so I'll forfeit this pose. In the side chest pose, I gotta go with Krizo. Iain is more conditioned, yes, it's very apparent here, but Krizo is just too muscular and has too much thickness. The arms and shoulders are easily Krizo's. His arms are obviously going to be Iain's from every angle, but the shoulders on Krizo are bigger and just more round than Iain's. And in the lower body, I do have Iain ahead there. His side leg has always been very good. He's got great quad and hamstring sweep and a lot of detail in the glutes and really the leg as a whole. Krizo does have the size here. I'd say it's equal to Iain on that front, but only for the quads and the hamstrings. Krizo's glutes are massively underdeveloped, and he doesn't have the separation nor the dryness that Iain does throughout his entire leg. Finally, for the actual pecs themselves, I like Krizo's a lot more. We all know how Iain's chest looked at his latest show, and we can kind of see it here. Not only that, but Iain's chest has always been a weak point and has always been very flat. Krizo is the opposite. He's got huge full pecs, and even though Iain is more conditioned, Krizo has a lot of striations running throughout his chest. And of course, overall from the side, Krizo is just packing on the size, and it's looking the thickness, and that's what we look for in this pose. Who's got the best chest and who's the biggest from the side, and today, Krizo is the winner in both of those categories. The back was the body part both of these gentlemen needed to improve the most from the Olympia. Iain's back at the Olympia looks so bad that there's now a whole rumor surrounding him and nerve damage potentially affecting his back because his lat insertions seem to completely disappear. And with Krizo, we knew before the Olympia that he had a weak back. It was always weak for him, and it didn't look that much better at the Olympia. Looking at this pose, I think it's clear who did their homework. I think Krizo's back is better, and probably the most improved too. Iain's back is still missing those lower lats. I gotta give him this though, he did look better here than at the Olympia, but the problem is still there. Ian's conditioning is really good here though. He's got very separated hamstrings, and although his lower and mid back are shallow, he's still bringing the max amount of detail he's got. He's just got a very good level of dryness throughout his entire physique. But turning to Krizo, surprisingly his condition is really good from the back. I almost want to say it's as good as Ian's. At minimum, they're really close. But other than conditioning and maybe the lower body, Krizo is doing everything better. Even the lower body is close. Krizo's hamstrings are bigger than Ian's, but Ian's look more dug out. But truthfully, that's probably just posing, because we all know how Krizo can be when it comes to posing. But it was better at this show. And for the glutes, well, Krizo has no ass. But if you look closely, hashtag no homo, he has a lot more detail in the glutes than Iain. Ian's are just big and dry. They don't really have the detail of Krizo's. So for the lower body as a whole, they can kind of go back and forth. But going up to the back itself, Krizo is much wider and doesn't have the shallow lower and mid back that Iain does, and has a lot of detail. Krizo's back is easily just more complete than Ian's. Krizo is even handedly winning in the arms and shoulders, so yeah, I don't think Iain stood too much of a chance here against Krizo's new and improved back double. Moving on to the rear lat spread, I feel that this is the closest pose thus far. Krizo's back is so thick, you can tell there's a lot of density there despite his back being not the most detailed. And I think Iain is kind of the best of both worlds in mass and detail. I can't see a solid argument for Krizo, but because Iain has a little bit of everything and not just unrefined mass, I'm going to give this pose to him narrowly. Iain is a tad wider than Krizo, and he's doing a good job of hiding whatever is happening to his lat insertions. And in terms of detail, it's not close. Iain is more detailed everywhere, especially the back. He's got more lower back striations, more separation between the different muscles of the back, rear delts, traps, rhomboids, all that good stuff, and the hamstrings are more dug out too. And because of his better posing here, the lack of lower lats is taken out of the equation, and you can really see how thick and dense Iain's back really is. Krizo's back is still huge, it's massive. He's got those big traps and some pretty thick erectors. And the lower back is pretty tight, but there's not too much detail anywhere else in that back. And while the glutes are more striated and the hamstrings are bigger, he's not flexing them enough to show detail, just like he was in the rear double. Overall, I think Iain wins more areas here, albeit very narrowly. I can certainly see the argument for a Krizo win here. Moving to the side tricep, I think this is an easy pose to decide. We have a guy with maybe the best arms in all of bodybuilding right now versus someone with a almost non-existent tricep. Yes, Iain's overall execution in this pose is top notch. He's presenting everything very well. Even his tricep would look good if it was just better. But that's the thing. Can you really win the pose if you barely have the namesake of that pose? If you ask me, I say no. If he had a weaker tricep, maybe like 5 out of 10, but the rest of his physique made up for it, that's fine. But this tricep is a 1 out of 10, and after all, he's standing next to Krizo. Now, Krizo's tricep from the side is a little bit underwhelming after seeing it from the front. Still not a bad tricep, it's nowhere near bad, I just think it looks better from the front, and I think he could have been a little more separated and a little more dry in the triceps. Overall though, Krizo easily wins this pose regardless of Iain having a poor tricep. Krizo also has that thickness in his physique from all angles, and he has it from the side. He's outsizing Iain in every area. Even the side leg is really good for Krizo. Iain's probably still better with this level of detail and his glutes versus Krizo's non-existent glutes, but that's the only area I'll give to Iain, and even then it's somewhat close. Krizo has the thickness, and he just looks fresh with a lot of pop to his muscles. And of course he actually has a tricep. For the abs and thighs pose, this is probably both guys' weakest pose. Krizo just doesn't have the deepest cuts in the abs, and even then, it's not a full 6-pack, it's just kind of a 4-pack. Not only that, but his obliques are quite thick, and there's hardly any taper in the upper body because of that. And then Iain's abs are just not symmetrical whatsoever. Not only that, but his chest is really distracting here. It's on full display, and that's not a good thing, because what is there left to look at? The poor abs or the misshapen chest? Iain does have better conditioning though, which is going to be rewarded the most in the abs and thigh pose versus any other pose. So each guy's abs are kind of a wash, so let's go to the lower body. And honestly there, I'm not really getting blown away by any athlete. Iain is probably better in the lower body as a whole down to conditioning and separation, but he definitely could have posed a little bit better here and brought more of that out. Krizo's legs are very big though, and while they're not as conditioned as Iain, they do have a pretty good amount of separation. So I think I'm going to go very narrowly with Iain in this pose. Let's be clear, I don't think anyone necessarily wins this pose. There are just more qualities I like from Iain than Krizo. This may ruffle some feathers, but because of Krizo's thick obliques, Iain actually has more taper, and I like his abs better because he actually has a full set even if they are a little unsymmetrical. And for the legs, in my opinion, it's basically just even. It's just down to what you prefer, and to be honest, I'm neutral on the whole thing when it comes to the lower body. So with all that taken into account, Iain quote-unquote wins the abs and thighs. And for the last shot, we have a slam slam dunk here for Krizo. Yes, how many times do I have to say Iain's conditioning is better and his legs look pretty good in my opinion. He's always had big quads and they're really detailed here, but we are looking for the most muscular person. I don't give a fuck about Iain's conditioning. Krizo is one of the most massive human beings on the planet right now, and outside of a couple other athletes, I can think of maybe 2, this is one of the best, most muscular poses in the open class, easy. And besides, Iain's legs looking good is where all the positives stop. That conditioning is nice, but it also leaves him nowhere to hide, and his less than symmetrical abs and misshapen chest are on full display. Krizo's got some amazing conditioning in the shot as well though. Plenty of details throughout the chest, shoulders, and arms, which are the main focus point in his crab variation. And most importantly, he's got the mass. This is an absolutely fantastic pose, and even with Iain's older chest and maybe a little bit better abs, he couldn't hold a candle to this shot. But to be fair, not a whole lot of other bodybuilders could. Well, that's the end of the comparison, and I think it's clear who won. If you have been keeping track, you'll know that Krizo won 5 poses while Iain only won 3, and honestly, the ones that Iain won weren't super convincing. I thought the front lat spread was kinda close, and I think it still could have gone to Krizo. I'll say the same thing about the rear lat spread, and the abs and thighs for Iain wasn't exactly a win. So I think 3 poses is honestly really generous for Iain, and if we include the margins in the poses, Krizo would have won his poses by a lot more than what Iain won his. If Krizo looks anything like he did here at the Impro Classic, he's beating Iain and probably moving into that top 8. And I think a lot of you guys agree. I put out a poll a few days ago asking who will place higher at the Olympia, and at the time of making this video, the response was overwhelmingly in Krizo's favor. Not to mention, if he gets maybe 5% better, we're talking about adding a new guy into that top 6 this year easily. That's going to do it for this video though. I'm sure you guys have a lot to say about this comparison, so go ahead and leave me a comment with your thoughts and let me know who you had winning. If you guys are looking for high quality, great tasting supplements, go over to RiseSupps.com and shop the multitude of official flavor collabs. And at checkout, use code DHudson5510 to get yourself 10% off and support the channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Like, comment, and of course subscribe, and thank you guys for watching.